Welcome back, grade 11s. Now let's look at our third concept, which is steps in report writing. So we are going to look at what steps must you follow when you write a report. Firstly, you need to define the purpose of a report and who will be reading it. So it's first the purpose and who will be reading it. So when you write a report, you need to understand what is it that you are aiming to achieve with this report that you are writing and who will be the reader of the report, the specific target audience of the report. Then do research to gather data. So you need to make sure that you research so that you will have all the information that you would want to put on your report before you even present it to the person that it is intended to. Plan the report structure. For instance, it must have a title, contents page, introduction, body, and conclusion. So you need to make sure that you plan your report in a way that it has to have a logical flow. Firstly, it needs to have a title. So your report must have a title which, if a person starts reading it, know exactly that this report is about what. And it also have to have a table of contents. And it must have an introduction, it must have a body, as well as the conclusion. Then prepare a work plan, start early and allow time for brainstorming and preliminary research. So as you gather information, you need to make sure that you prepare a work plan. How are you going to present that particular report? You need to allow time for brainstorming so that you would know exactly if the facts that you have included in your report are needed or they are not needed. So hence you have to first do the research before you even pitch or even write the report. Clearly display the topic of the report at the top of the page. So obviously at the top of the page, like you would see in this page that you're looking at, there is a topic there that says steps in report writing. So obviously when you write your report, it has to have a topic at the top of the page, not at the end of the page. Now we are looking at business reports and improvement areas. Factors to consider when analyzing a business report. Does it contain relevant information? So surely you would be having your report in your hand and ask these questions. Does it only contain the relevant information? If it does not, then it simply means that you need to remove all the irrelevant information from the report. And another factor that you also have to consider is the aim of the report achieved. So you need to look at the aim if it was achieved. If it was not achieved, the aim of the report, then you need to make necessary adjustments in line with the aim of the report. Another factor is the language and terminology used at the level of the people using the report. If not, then you need to make sure that you make use of the language expert to make changes in the report. Then determine the credibility of the report. Is the report credible? If not, you need to improve by making use of credible research materials. Material that we can rely on, material that we know that if we search that particular information, obviously it's going to pop up. So it has to be credible. Now let's look at our last concept, which is responding to questions in a non-aggressive manner. So before we go there, firstly, you need to understand grade 11s that after doing your presentation, there has to be time for question and answer session. So now it's that time. You do not respond while you are presenting. You first prepare the presentation at home and then you present your presentation. That would be during the presentation while you're standing there and the audience are seated down listening to what you're saying. Then after presenting, there comes a time whereby you have to whereby the audience have to ask questions and you have to do what? You have to respond to those questions. So that's why we are looking at the factors that need to be considered when you respond to questions in a how can you respond to questions in a non-aggressive manner? First, you need to listen to each question carefully and ensure that you interpret the question correctly. So the first thing that you have to do, you need to listen to the audience or to the speaker or the questioner who will be asking that question And thereafter, you interpret that, is this what you are trying to ask? So that if it's not clear, then the person who posed the question will be able to rephrase and ask the question in a manner that you understand it. Then secondly, when answering a question, it's important to address the question and not the person asking the question. So obviously you get a question from one of the audience, then you must not go to that particular person who posed the question, but instead you need to address the question, answer the question so that everybody can hear the answer, so that even a person who wanted to ask the very same question is answered through you addressing the question and not the person who has addressed the question. Keep answers short and to the point. So you need to make sure that when you respond to questions, your answers are short and to the point, so that you would avoid people not understanding exactly what your response was. Acknowledge good questions. So obviously, if you get a good question from audience, you need to acknowledge that good question. In that way, audience will be encouraged to ask even more questions if you acknowledge the questions that they have asked when they are good. Now, let's look at composing, factors to consider when you compose a flyer. So this would be our example of a flyer. You need to decide on the main theme of the flyer. So you need to decide on the main subject of the flyer, that what is it about. Then make the central theme eye-catching or appealing to the reader. So as you can see on our picture there, it says new arrival, best sneaker. So obviously this one captures your attention when you look at that flyer. So it has to be appealing, it has to be attractive, so that it can draw the attention of the reader. Another factor to consider, the flyer should consist of both graphics and words. So you see in our picture, we have a graphic, we also have words that communicate to us as audience what the flyer is all about. You need to make sure that you limit the number of words on the flyer. You must not write a flyer as if it's sort of a novel. You need to limit the words that you've written on the flyer so that people cannot be bored while trying to read or figure out what your flyer is all about. Use color and large fonts for the most important information. So in order for you to highlight those important information, give them color, make them bold, so that that important information, when the reader starts to see your flyer, it just captures their interest, and they are able to know quickly, before even doing many things or even going through the flyer, what the flyer is all about. I hope and wish that today's lesson was fruitful, and surely you're going to apply everything that you've learned in this lesson. Hope to see you soon. Goodbye.